Ba da 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 da. Superman. Superman, the Christopher Reeve story, is finally upon us. And instead of doing a review of this documentary, I instead want to do a dedication and tribute to the man himself, Christopher Reeve, and count down what I consider the best moment from each of his Superman movies. I mean, what can I say about Reeve that hasn't been said before? He is the definitive face of Superman. And these movies, especially that first two, were trailblazers in the superhero genre. Without further ado, let's dive in as I count what I consider the best moment from each of his movies. Just a couple of quick disclaimers. I do not own any clips or audio from the movies that are being shown. All these films are owned by Warner Brothers, and Superman is owned by DC Comics, so please do not sue me or get me demonetized. And of course, since I'll be delving into some plot details and story elements of these movies, there will be some spoilers. But honestly, these movies are 40 plus years old. If you haven't seen them, that's on you. Anyway, let's get started. Starting off with 1978's Superman, the movie. What can I say that hasn't been said about this movie? This movie truly showed that a man can fly, as it says in the movie posters. It started the superhero genre movie craze. It really showed that these characters and icons can be put to the screen. And of course, it gave us the legendary Christopher Reeve. I consider the original Superman the perfect superhero movie. Like, if I ever become a parent and a dad and have my own kids and I want to show them a superhero movie, this would be the top one I would show them. Probably next to Batman '89, the first Spider-Man movie, and Iron Man. It had a great cast, mind-blowing and revolutionary effects. Despite looking incredibly outdated and cheesy by today's standards, it's a trailblazer back then, with a great cast of Gene Hackman and Margot Kidder being absolute standouts for the supporting cast, and Reeve being the perfect lead and the definitive Superman for a generation and for superhero movies to come. When it came to picking my favorite moment from this movie in particular, that was very hard because there was a lot of iconic scenes in this movie, from Clark realizing that despite all his powers, he can't save his father, and to, of course, the legendary spinning around the world reversing time, which I'll delve into in a little bit. But the one scene that I really want to talk about, and I consider it the best when it comes to his take on Superman, was his introduction. Let's take a look. At this point in the movie, Clark just had his first day at the Daily Planet. He got a chance to meet Lois, Perry White, and Jimmy Olsen, and the entire staff of the Daily Planet, and get himself accustomed to Metropolis. However, after his first day at that night, he sees Lois in trouble with a helicopter malfunction hanging off the side of a building, and he knew it was his time to make his debut as Superman. The crowd is gathered. Lois is struggling to hang on for her dear life, and during all this, music is booming and slowly building up and up and up to this moment.
Hey, Jim! Whoa!
Excuse me.
That's a bad outfit! Whoa!
Okay, press line, move these people. God, look up there.
What the hell's that?
Easy, miss. I've got you.
You've got me! Who's got you? I can't.
Well, I certainly hope this little incident hasn't put you off flying, miss. Statistically speaking, of course, it's still the safest way to travel.
Right. Wait! Who are you?
A friend.
Bye.
I mean, this whole scene where he was saving Lois from the helicopter and everybody just watching him in awe, it defines his Superman. He had a presence to him, he was kind, he was charming, and despite the hokey special effects that is considered dated today, it was legendary and mind-blowing at the time. And this was a great introduction to what will become a legendary performance. So that is why I consider this moment the best, in my opinion, in the first movie. I was considering putting the reversing time scene towards the end after he failed to save Lois, because it shows Superman's humanity, and Reeve let out a primal scream that really showcases acting. But this whole scene just felt really out of place, came out of nowhere, and it just does not make sense in the long haul, and it was the only problem I had with this near perfect movie. Then in 1980's Superman 2, I consider it as good, if not better, than the first movie. It delved more into the relationship between Lois Lane and Clark Kent / Superman. It showed a different side of his character, and also introduces the legendary Terrence Stamp as General Zod, who was teased in the last one, but you got to see him full-blown force in this movie. And without getting into it, this movie had a troubled production. Richard Donner was supposed to direct this movie, but he left halfway through after having some conflicts with Warner Brothers, so they brought in Richard Lester, who came in to finish up the film. But besides that, there are also a lot of great moments in this movie I can talk about, such as the initial fight with Superman, Zod, and his cronies. And I was considering on making this my favorite moment from this movie, because it really showed how Superman can Superman can handle taking on somebody on the same power level as him, and shows off his fighting prowess and how he was able to juggle between multiple enemies. But mainly because it showed that during the fight, his main concern wasn't beating up the bad guys, it was more protecting the citizens of Metropolis. Or after some time, Lois figured out that Clark Kent is Superman. After falling in love and getting to know each other some more and more, and feeling a different kind of relationship, Clark decides to give up his powers and stop being Superman just so he can be with Lois. It speaks to how much he's willing to sacrifice for his loved ones, and shows a different side to his character and shows his humanity. But the part I really want to show was towards the end, where Superman retreated back to the fortress with Lois, Luthor, Zod, and his cronies following him behind. It also leads to a brief fight with Superman and the evil Kryptonians, and he was on his last leg, and he came up with one final resort. After playing into Luthor's more devious and dishonesty side, he knew that he's willing to sell out Superman any chance to get, and right before Zod could kill both Superman and Luthor, he sold him out about the chamber that made him lose his powers in the first place, and was able to gain Zod's favor again. And after being forced back into the chamber, there's some subtle hints and clues letting audiences know that something's not right compared to the last time this happened. Instead of the lights being inside the chamber, it was instead outside, and Luthor and some of the guys are noticing, yeah, something's off about this. But Superman, he's playing it cool and just pretending like it's all going down. And then once the lights are off and the whole process is over, Superman steps out of the chamber and approaches General Zod. Zod forces him to kneel and submit to his rule, and then this happens.
Swear eternal loyalty to Zod. switched it. He did it to them. I mean, the lights were on out here. While he was...
What I like about this moment and why I chose this scene was it shows Superman's strategic mind. It, instead of using his power and his strength, he decides to beat the enemy with using a plan and outsmarting the enemy, which is something that I feel like gets extremely overlooked when it comes to Superman. People know him from flying, his super strength, and his heat vision and his speed. So this was a great reminder to me that, yeah, he can have plans, and he's actually way smarter than he appears to be. I also want to give a quick mention to the hilariously amnesia kiss that Clark gave Lois at the end. I would talk about it, but it was just so dumb and just so out of nowhere. I had to mention it, but it's not my favorite moment, and it's what kind of killed the movie for me. Unfortunately, I cannot say the quality did not continue on with Superman 3. Lester stayed on to direct this one, and this was a far cry from the first two films. For one thing, it leaned way too much into comedy with Richard Pryor, who is normally hilarious and really good at stand-up comedy, but this was his worst material. And also, Superman was barely in this movie. It had a strange plot involving supercomputers and Superman turning evil. When I say Superman turning evil, I don't mean that like he became like a Homelander or an Injustice Superman type where he just tries to take over the world. Instead, he comes across as more of a jerk. Like he goes to bars, he hooks up with other women, he hits on girls, he even straightens out the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Like this evil Superman could walk, so Bully McGuire can soar. But despite all its flaws, there is one scene which is probably the best part of this entire movie, and it's when the good side of Superman, or in this case Clark Kent, is trying to fight back control and become against his evil. There's no real explanation how these two separate, but it does lead into essentially a WWE-esque fight between Clark Kent and Superman. This all took place in a junkyard after Superman had a drunk spout at a local bar, and after a kid begged him, Superman, Superman, come back! He decides to land in this junkyard and start to snap out of it. And what I like about this fight is shows how different these two personalities are, and it really showcases Reeve's ability and skills as an actor, with the evil Superman being more aggressive and angry and kind of stammering a little bit like he's just tired and still being a little drunk, with the Clark Kent side of course being timid, kind and gentle, and just trying to do his best in this fight. And after this fight drags out a little longer than I would have liked, evil Superman thinks he's coming out top, signifying it by crushing Clark's glasses, and he wanted to check on his handiwork and walks over to the compactor, and then turns out Clark is still alive, bursting through the machine, and then this happens. So what I like about this is it shows the good part of Superman, in this case Clark Kent, going against his evil counterpart in a literal way. I mean, I do think it's weirdly executed, but honestly, in a movie like this, it works, and it's also a great fight. Even by today's standards, it might look like, again, really cheesy, but it still works with what it's trying to convey and what it's trying to do. And Plus, it also shows how good of an actor Christopher Reeve really is by showing like the evil Superman going against a meek, mild-mannered Clark Kent. So for that reason, this whole fight scene is my favorite moment from Superman 3. Just when you thought things couldn't get any worse, we got Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. This is hands down easily not just the worst Christopher Reeve Superman movie, but the worst Superman movie, period. It's also another strange movie. This had just way too much going on with a plot involving getting rid of nuclear warfare and Luthor breaking out of jail, enacting revenge on Superman, creating his own evil Superman, but not like the one we saw in the last movie. It was essentially a new character named Nuclear Man, who they could have just made Bizarro, but whatever. It was weird, guys. And not to mention the cheapest effects I've ever seen, even by late 80s standards, including shots like this, and of course reusing the same flying scene over and over and over again. And I tried really hard to be sincere and genuine about this. I tried finding a scene where he had like a good speech, or when he was really showing his super heroics, but nothing really stood out to me. So I decided to go for a scene that was just so bafflingly bad that it just encapsulates this entire movie. At this point in the movie, Superman and Nuclear Man has been having a fight that spanned across the globe, reaching New York City, and eventually leading its way to China. During their fight, the Great Wall of China gets damaged and destroyed, and after Nuclear Man retreats, Superman decides to stay put and repair it, but he does it in a way that you won't expect. Watch. What was that? So instead of showing him doing super speed and just putting it all together, instead he just looks at it, shoots a laser vision, boom, it's repaired. It was a cheap use of effects and the studio just cutting corners. Granted, this was how Superman comics were written at the time, where the writers just came up with whatever superpower he has to just automatically fix the situation. But they could have done it any more creatively, and this scene alone just shows why Superman 4 just does not work. Anyway, let's move on, please. So finally, I decided to end with the Richard Donner cut of Superman 2. Mainly because I want to end this video on a very high and good note, and I want to shed more light on this cut of Superman 2. It is a big improvement from the theatrical one that we did get. Even though there isn't really major differences with this movie, the only changes that stood out to me was Zod and his crew was more ruthless, a more developed romance between Lois and Clark, the ending was changed, and it honestly felt more mature and serious compared to the one that we got, and it felt more akin to the first Superman movie. So in this case, I decided to talk about a scene that was only shown in this version of the movie specifically, because I didn't want to feel like I'm repeating myself, and I just wanted to showcase something that was special to this film in particular. That being Lois Lane figuring out that Clark Kent is Superman. For those who don't know, how it was done in the original movie was Clark just simply tripped on a bear rug and just got his hand stuck in a fireplace. Lois saw there was no burn marks, and that was the moment she goes, "Oh, that's Superman." Which I think was lazy and didn't really showcase those characters at their best. But how it was done in this version of the film was done amazingly. Let's check it out.
Help it if I had to go to the...
You are Superman, aren't you?
Lois, look, we've been through these hallucinations of yours before. Can't you see what you almost did? Throwing yourself off a building 30 stories high. Can't you see what a tragic mistake you almost made?
I made a mistake. I made a mistake because I risked my life instead of yours.
Lois, Don't be insane.
And don't fall down, because you're just gonna have to get up again.
No, Lois, now don't be crazy now.
It is you. I guess I've known this for the longest time.
You realize, of course, if you'd been wrong, Clark Kent would have been killed.
With a blank?
So the reason I wanted to talk about this scene was it just shows how great of an actor Reeve really is. You see just the change in him from going from Clark Kent to Superman. He started off like meek, tender, like very soft-spoken, begging Lois not to pull the trigger. Then once that happens, it's like he just automatically changes to somebody else. It is, and when that change happens, he's broad-chested, sits up straight, is more confident, almost like he's talking to a different person. And also, this is a great moment for Margot Kidder's Lois Lane, because it shows just how cunning and smart that character can be, and just how easily she tricks Superman. And that is why this is my favorite moment from the Richard Donner cut, specifically for this version of the movie. And that is it, guys. That is my favorite moment from each of the original Superman movies. What's yours? And are you going to check out this documentary that's coming? And do you have a favorite Chris Reeve Superman movie as well? Let me know down in the comments in the Down the Under Australia box. And don't forget to check out my socials. Like, share, comment, and subscribe. And hopefully, I'll see you next time. Up, and away.